So in this video, we take a look at the perspective of the defence for Lucy Letby. Many people have suggested that Lucy Letby's defence was simply not good enough, that Lucy Letby was somehow failed by her defence team. But in this video, I'm going to share with you why I believe that is absolutely not the case. First of all, we're going to go through the defence opening speech. Now, this is really important to take note of, because this was really the defence setting out their strategy or their plan of attack in terms of why Lucy Letby was innocent. And then I'm going to talk to you about Lucy Letby's appearance on the witness stand and why I believe personally that Lucy Letby sealed her own fate. Mr. Myers, on behalf of the defence. The sympathy of everyone will rightly be with the families of the children involved in this case. We all share the same feelings and experiences. It is natural to sympathise, we all do it. We recognise the sadness, distress and anger that come with allegations like these. We acknowledge the great loss suffered by all families. Nothing I can say in this trial is intended to diminish that in any way. It is obvious, where we have such terrible allegations, it would be terribly easy for emotion to overcome reason and convict without hearing a word of evidence. There is a real danger people will simply accept the prosecution theory of guilt. It is a theory built firmly on coincidence. What we are left with in this case is coincidence. In the events that happened, sometimes what happened was the result of deterioration in a baby. Sometimes no one can say what caused a deterioration. Sometimes things have gone wrong, or the necessary standards of care have not been met. Irrespective of anything to do with Lucy Letby, for that she should not get the blame. The assumption is the worse it sounds, the more guilty she must be. Lucy Letby was a dedicated nurse who did her best to care for infants and did not intentionally cause any harm to any baby. She loved her job and cared for the babies' families. You won't get an answer to what Letby is like through seeing her in the dock. This is what she is like 6 years after the allegations started. That, as you can imagine, is gruelling for anyone. You may want to keep that in mind as we go through the evidence in this case. A young woman who trained hard to be a nurse and looked after many vulnerable babies for years. A young woman who loved what she did and found she was being blamed for the deaths of the babies she cared for. We are dealing with a real person, dealing with a litany of allegations, not one of which has been proved. Mr. Myers refers back to the note shown to the court just before the break. He said it is a note written in anguish and despair. She was going through a grievance procedure with the NHS at the time the court hears, and knew what was being said about her before her arrest. The allegations were destructive, the court hears. The note is headed, "Not good enough." The defence notes it does not say guilty. The note adds, "I will never have children or marry." Another part of the note says, "I haven't done anything wrong." Mr. Myers states, "We say people can pour feelings onto paper. This paper represents the anguished state of mind Letby felt when accused of killing children she had cared for. We say this paper represents anguish and not guilt." There was further paperwork the police took from Letby's address at the time of her arrest. The defence say the paperwork was, quote, "nothing more extraordinary than Letby being someone who scribbles a lot of work down and keeps hold of it." You will find, from what we have heard, no evidence of her actually doing harm to a child. These allegations are of attacks. You will have heard words of poisoning, sabotage, words likely to have had an emotional impact on you. You will have to refer to whether Letby is engaged in any of the attacks alleged. Using syringes to inject air? No. Tampering with bags of fluid or poisoning them? No. Physically assaulting children? Smothering them? We are dealing with 24 events, and we say there is nothing to suggest that. The time of Letby's presence has itself become an explanation for these deteriorations. The list on nursing staff on duty for all the fatal and non-fatal collapses, with Letby on duty for all events, is shown again to the court. This table exists because the prosecution created it. It was put together for the purpose of the prosecution. It was to show what were declared to be key events. This is a self-serving document. What we have here is because the prosecution have chosen to present it this way. The defence says it does not show the individual health of the children concerned, or any problems they had from birth, or the risks, or the course of treatment, and or problems encountered by said treatment. The chart does not show other collapses or desaturations for the children when Letby is not present. The table does not show shortcomings in care, which could have impacted the health of the baby, or how busy the unit was, or what Letby was actually doing at the time of the event. It doesn't show whether Lucy Letby was anywhere near to a child at the time of the event, or if there was a problem which could be traced before Letby's arrival. Regarding the explanations for what happened, Mr. Myers told the court, "This is something which is quite a difficult question, even for the experts to look at. The cause of the deteriorations or deaths is not clear and have a number of possibilities. Generally, we are dealing with babies who are fragile and their condition can change and deteriorate very rapidly." Mr. Myers adds the premature and vulnerable babies can come with conditions that require extra treatment and are prone to infections. It is crucial to consider the starting point in these cases. There is a question to whether this hospital should have been caring for this number of children. We suggest whether an event that clearly fits an ongoing and difficult condition has been converted into an event of deep suspicion that harm is being done. For a nurse standing in a neonatal unit next to an infant is unremarkable, without a suspicion of guilt. When we come to the experts, you will need to consider their evidence and how strong it is. The defence say there are 5 important considerations for the evidence: the birth condition of the infant, if there were any problems in the care leading up to the event, whether the prosecution expert evidence concludes there was deliberate harm done, whether Lucy Letby was present at the relevant time and what she was doing, and whether there were failings in the care by other people or the neonatal unit as a whole. The birth condition of the infants. Mr. Myers tells the court, quote, "We are dealing with some of the most medically fragile babies under the most intense medical care. All of them, bar one, are premature to varying degrees. Some had considerable problems. These babies are already at risk of deterioration, and this can happen unexpectedly and it can be rapid." Mr. Myers refers to the medical situation and condition of the children involved. Sometimes that includes, quote, "the ability of doctors and nurses to spot signs of problems in the build-up to the event. Sometimes that would be a problem if the unit was understaffed and overstretched." The defence say in relation to the evidence, we have to be careful of the assumption or theory of guilt and the dangers of opinion in relation to the conclusions of deliberate harm. We say that if an expert sets out with an expectation or a suspicion of harm being done, that may make it more likely they will reach conclusions which are harm-based, rather than innocent explanations. When there is no explanation, there is a danger of the expert filling the absence of an explanation with one, by the prosecution. If someone looks for something and has something in mind, they will look for that. Confirmation bias, added Mr. Myers. There is plenty of disagreement between a prosecution expert evidence and the defence. Mr. Myers tells the court that sometimes deteriorations are unexplained, and if Lucy Letby cannot provide an explanation, that does not make her responsible. For every count, Letby is adamant she has done nothing wrong to cause any deliberate harm to any of the babies in the case, Mr. Myers adds. Regarding the point of air embolus cases, the defence accept it is a theoretical possibility, but that does not establish very much. The defence do not accept for child A an air embolus was the cause, but one of suboptimal care, as a result of either lack of fluids or various lines put into him with potential to interfere with his heart rate. You'll hear in this case that the air present after death does not indicate an air embolus. Mr. Myers said air present in the abdomen can happen post-mortem. For child B, the defence say she had been born in a precarious condition, and there were no signs of diagnosing an air embolus. The defence say prosecution experts had been influenced into believing harm was done. The defence say child B had other episodes where she struggled to breathe after the indictment. For For child C, the defence say it is accepted that someone had injected air as a theoretical possibility, but that is a very long way from proving what has taken place. Mr. Myers said the jury would have to take a look at the practicalities of that and consider alternative explanations. Child C was subject to a variety of complications due to being born premature, the jury is told. We say, for a starting point, he should have been at a unit providing more specialist care. The defence say pathology identified acute pneumonia in child C. The defence suggest a structural blockage could have caused distension. For child D, the defence say the hospital failed to provide appropriate care, and this was beyond dispute as the prosecution accepted care was suboptimal. Child D was never able to breathe unaided, and there was a strong possibility of infection and evidence of pneumonia after death. For child E, the defence say there is no evidence of an air embolus or of direct trauma that led to blood loss. There was no clear explanation on the cause of death, but that was not a presumption of guilt. The defence say the absence of a post-mortem meant the prosecution could float suggestions of deliberate harm. For child F and child L, the children allegedly poisoned with insulin, the defence cannot say what has happened. It is difficult to say if you don't know, Mr. Myers said. So much has been said about these are not simple allegations which can automatically lead to a conviction. The defence say child E's TPN bag was put up by Letby in August 2015, and hours later there were blood sugar problems. That bag was replaced in the absence of Letby, but the problems continued. The sample taken came from the second bag, the defence say. A professor had given 3 possible explanations, none of which identified Letby as a culprit. For child L, there were issues with the documentation provided, so those are challenged, the defence say. There is nothing to say Letby was directly involved in the acts. For child G, the defence say the child was extremely premature. On the margins of viability, there will be problems, Mr. Myers said. Child G was a high-risk baby, irrespective of anything to do with Lucy Letby. Child G also displayed signs of infection. For child H, the defence say she was treated with chest drains and her case, as said by the prosecution, was complicated by suboptimal treatment. Butterfly needles were left in for hours, which may have punctured her lung. The prosecution experts appear to have no explanation for what happened. The harm was nothing to do with Lucy Letby, and the cause of child H's deterioration included infection. For child I, the defence say her death was a result of ongoing clinical problems caused by her extreme prematurity. The air embolus is not accepted as a cause by the defence. The defence say CPAP treatment may have caused CPAP belly in child I, causing a distended abdomen. For child J, the defence say there is not a great deal of explanation for what caused the deterioration from the prosecution experts. The defence say there is an assumption of deliberate harm being used to blame her, when it was actually inadequate care at the hospital. For child K, the defence say the tube was dislodged, and the prosecution say that was Letby's doing. Letby does not agree she did that, nor is she seen to have done that. The prosecution say child K had been sedated. The defence say it is disputed that child K was able to move, and there would be evidence to follow on that. The defence say there was suboptimal care and child K should not have been at the Countess of Chester Hospital in the first place. For child M, the defence say there is no obvious cause of collapse in this case, but it is not established the obvious one is an air embolus. We are back in a territory of blaming Lucy Letby because there is no other cause. The mere fact she is there is being used as an explanation. For child N, the defence say there are many reasons why a baby would shout or scream. It was far more likely to be hunger. You certainly won't find evidence of anything else. Regarding the allegation Letby did something to cause child N to bleed, the prosecution say the intubating doctor already saw blood because Letby had harmed him. The defence disagree and say blood was not identified until intubation had already happened or was in the process of happening. There were 3 attempts to intubate him. The defence say again there was suboptimal care for child N. For child O, the allegations are various. An air embolus is not accepted and the defence point towards an infection along with CPAP belly. The liver injury was caused during resuscitation, the defence say. The prosecution do not accept that, Mr Myers tells the court. For child P, the defence agreed a collapse could have occurred by a splintered diaphragm, but do not agree with how it was caused. The defence say optoflow is the cause. The defence agree once child P collapsed, it was unclear why he did not respond to resuscitation, but that it did not point to deliberate harm. For child Q, the defence say there was viral drawn aspirates indicating a bowel problem supported by a diagnosis of NEC. A poorly functioning bowel had led to child Q vomiting. Mr Myers added there are two further areas to consider. It is important not to guess or proceed on a presumption of guilt. Even when we have timings, some will be more precise than others. There were many occasions when Lucy Letby was simply not there, when harm was being alleged. Lucy Letby was a young nurse with no family commitment who had built her life around a neonatal unit. She was often called in to help babies with severe health issues. She was more likely to be there to cover for clinically difficult babies. The defence say Letby's lack of recollecting details in police interviews should be put into context. Like other witnesses who may not be able to recall anything beyond the notes they made at the time. Goodness knows how many babies she will have cared for over the years, Mr Myers said. Mr Myers said this is important. It would be unbalanced and unfair if the focus was on Lucy Letby without focusing on other problems with staff or how the unit was run. We do not suggest for one moment the doctors and nurses did anything other than the best they could. What they do is admirable and crucial. We say there are problems with the way the unit performed which had nothing to do with Lucy Letby. Examples of suboptimal care for babies previously mentioned and conceded by the prosecution are relayed to the jury. There are many other examples of suboptimal care of babies in this unit, Mr Myers said. The defence say the prosecution have referred to how babies improved rapidly when moved to a tertiary unit, when moved away from Lucy Letby. The defence says the improvement could be because they had been moved away from the Countess of Chester Hospital. It is evidence that the unit did not always deliver the level of care that it should have provided, and to blame Letby is unfair and inaccurate. Mr Myers explains the neonatal unit is a level 2 unit, with level 3 offering the highest specialist care for newborns such as in Arrow Park. Either through lack of technical level of skill among the staff, or because it was too busy and could not deliver with the level of staff it had available, the Countess of Chester Hospital Neonatal Unit was subsequently redesignated as a Level 1 unit after Letby was redeployed in July 2016. You can imagine in a situation like that, there is bound to be concern. The defence also refer to Dr J-Ram and his concern about Letby's behaviour as detailed by the prosecution in the opening. You may wonder what on earth that is all about. If Dr J-Ram had these suspicions, when did they start? You may think that if consultants had suspicions, then why did Letby continue? You may wonder if there was any basis for suspicion at all. You may think that suspicions by one or more consultants like that, if Letby is to blame, then that is fertile self-serving territory for an assumption of guilt to take hold. Mr Myers said Letby became a target for blame. It would be very unfair to judge Lucy Letby by standards or expectations different to other staff in the unit, Mr Myers said. The defence say if it can be interpreted the unit is understaffed, treatment is hurried, mistakes made and records not kept, mistakes may not be immediate. Mr Myers states, if the unit has failed in its care, which has led to this uncharacteristic spike in deaths, you can imagine pressures which call for an explanation, distancing the blame from those running the hospital through confirmation bias. The blame is far too great for just one person. In that doc is a woman who says this is not her fault. Now, what many people need to remember, particularly those who are on the side or favour Lucy Letby's innocence, is that the defence case was based around the hospital itself, the staffing levels, medical incompetencies, or maybe even someone who wasn't Lucy Letby making a mistake. Yet Lucy Letby actually harmed her own defence when she took the stand. And now some people will say, well, maybe the defence let Lucy Letby down. Maybe they didn't call enough experts. Maybe they didn't even have Lucy Letby's best interests at heart. I've even read that online in some places. But what needs to be remembered is what Lucy Letby said on the witness stand. When she had her moment to talk about what happened in these individual cases, when she had her moment to explain what took place in each individual case, I firmly believe that she actually harmed her own defence, and she didn't actually leave many paths worthy of exploration for her defence to go down after she took the stand. Just again, bear in mind, the defence case revolves around the hospital itself and the care in which it provided. Yet during the cross-examination given by Nicholas Johnson KC, which you can see on my channel, I've just uploaded this a little bit earlier on today. It's called Lucy Letby, I Am Innocent. That's the full cross-examination by the prosecution. Now, in that video, you will hear on countless occasions through each individual case, child A, B, C, all the way to child Q. When Nicholas Johnson starts to talk about each individual case, he asks Lucy Letby the following questions. Were there staffing level issues or medical incompetencies or someone else making a mistake? Was that a contributory factor to either this child's collapse or this child's death? And on the vast number of occasions throughout these cases, Lucy Letby actually gave a response. She said no. Now, not for every case, but for the majority of cases, Lucy Letby ruled out staffing levels, ruled out medical incompetencies, and ruled out someone else at the hospital making a mistake as a contributory factor to that child's decline. What I think is a big issue with this case, however, is where people are talking about Lucy Letby's innocence, yet they haven't really got a full grasp or a decent grasp of what took place in court. Because I'm hearing a lot online about graphs and statistics and science and this, that and the other. But the truth of the matter is Lucy Letby terminated her own defence. Because on the last day of her cross-examination, Nicholas Johnson, the prosecuting barrister, went through each and every individual case. And at this point, Lucy Letby had nowhere to turn. Her defence at this point was, I am just a band 5 nurse. I don't really know if something else happened. I'm underqualified to give a medical opinion as to what was wrong with these babies. And that should have been, to be perfectly honest, her answer throughout this entire trial. But she did give answers. Even here, I'm just going to quote, I can't remember which case this is from, possibly child C. She rules out staffing levels, medical incompetencies, or someone making a mistake as a contributory factor to the child's collapse. So here, she's giving an opinion. Yet when it was brought back toward the end, as I say, the final day of her cross-examination, she then turned around and said, I'm a band 5 nurse. I'm underqualified to be telling you why medically these children were unwell. You know, I'm underqualified. And Nicholas Johnson said, so basically what you're saying is that it's below your pay grade to have an opinion. And she said, I don't know, medically speaking, what was wrong with these children. Yet she gave an opinion. She should, I mean, anyone who is innocent, I would have expected them to say, I'm a band 5 nurse. I'm a fully trained band 5 nurse. I've got absolutely no idea why these children died, but I can't really give you a medical opinion because I'm not qualified to do so. But she gave an opinion. This is the issue. She actually terminated her own defence. By having an opinion on each and every individual case, when it came to the last day, she'd only give reasons for around 4 or 5 out of the 17 children in this case. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, all of these different individual cases, she had actually given a response to each individual one. Yet, as I say, at the very last moment, she said, well, I can't really have an opinion. I don't know what happened because I'm not medically trained. I'm just a nurse. So I don't know why she gave an answer for A to Q. I don't even know why she did that. Why would you do that? As I say, surely an innocent person is just going to sit there and say, yes, I was present when this happened, but I've got absolutely no idea what happened medically because I'm not a doctor. But it says there, she rules out staffing levels as an issue. She rules out medical incompetencies as an issue. How? How can she? She's already said she's not qualified. So the only person that you have to blame here in terms of her defence and the defence strategy is Lucy Letby taking the stand. What this all comes down to in terms of Lucy Letby's trial is that Lucy Letby gave an opinion. She gave an opinion for each and every individual case when she was asked specific questions. Staffing levels, medical incompetencies, or someone else making a mistake other than herself. Yet at the end of the trial, she said, well, I'm not qualified to have an opinion. That's literally what this boils down to. She gave an opinion throughout her cross-examination. And then when Mr. Johnson said, well, for child A, you've mentioned nothing. For child D, child E, child F, you've mentioned nothing. Child G, you've mentioned nothing. So what are you suggesting are the shortcomings from the hospital? That's literally how it went. And at that point in time, because Lucy Letby had answered those questions and said, no, I don't believe that there were staffing issues that caused this collapse. I don't believe it's medical incompetence that caused this collapse. She was then made to look like, well, okay, you said that there's this conspiracy against you. There's this gang of doctors who are trying to cover failings at the Countess of Chester Hospital. But what are you saying the failings are? And then she said, well, I'm not qualified to spot these failings. Yet she had an opinion on them. This is the problem. She gave an opinion throughout her cross-examination. Anyone really in her position, if you're speaking from a point of innocence here, would be or should be saying, as I said earlier, I'm a band 5 nurse. I did my best for these babies. I've cared for many babies over the years, but I am a band 5 nurse. I'm not a doctor. I don't know if medical incompetency may have led to this child's collapse. That's how it should have came across, but she actually gave an answer. No, I don't believe staffing levels were an issue. I don't believe medical incompetencies were an issue. So don't look at this case and think to yourselves, the defence did a terrible job. Because after this event, what could the defence possibly do? They'd already set up the idea of the hospital failing in some way. And yet Lucy Letby then completely and utterly bulldozed that whole idea by taking the stand and ruling out the hospital as a factor in these children's deaths. It's also worth mentioning that not only did Nicholas Johnson go through those cases, and it was very apparent that Lucy Letby didn't have an answer to the questions which Nicholas Johnson was asking her, but he even said to her, is there anything else that you want to add now regarding these cases? Any other reason why these children collapsed? And she said, no. And when I look back at this, it just seems quite unbelievable in a lot of ways. Someone who had had years to think about this day when she would take the stand, where she had faced questions from the prosecuting barrister. And yet, in my opinion, as I said at the very start of this video, Lucy Letby in a lot of ways sealed her own fate. When we look back at the arrest, her interviews, the way that the police have spoken about Lucy Letby and her demeanour throughout this whole entire process, I do genuinely believe that there was an air of acceptance, an air of inevitability in Lucy Letby giving evidence. She didn't put up much of a fight. And the more I look back at this, I feel that Lucy Letby was accepting in some ways of what she had done and what she now faces. Anyway, do leave your own thoughts down in the comment section below. Having heard what I've told you here, why do you believe that Lucy Letby would have given those answers and then turned around at the very end of this trial and said, actually, I'm not really qualified to have an opinion? Why would she have done that? Did Lucy Letby know what her fate was going to be the entire time? Or do you believe somehow that there are still issues here with Lucy Letby's defence team? Leave your thoughts and theories down in the comment section below.